Cheers, guys. Epix 911, welcome to the Elitist Geek VR news for Tuesday, November 15th, 2016. Let's jump right into VR, guys. We have a metric crap ton of news to talk about today. A hell of a lot of news, some preamble, so let's jump right in. Last week, I did a quick look and beat Robinson the Journey for PlayStation VR. This week, two new PlayStation VR releases. We have Time Machine VR and Space Rift, both for, again, PlayStation VR. Time Machine VR is best described as an educational adventure game. Space Rift, the description for that is take Eve Valkyrie, apply a single-player campaign to that, have that stand alone, and you get Space Rift. So those will be later this week. Next game I want to talk about is Warhammer End Times Vermintide. Now, this is a game heavily based on Left 4 Dead. So same kind of concept, very similar gameplay. Instead of zombies, rat people. And the developer Fat Shark, as recent as July, August, had indicated that they had no plans of creating a virtual reality version of the game because it was way too fast-paced. Now, I don't agree with that statement to begin with because there are a hell of a lot of fast-paced VR games. And raw data works very good, thank you, and it's fast-paced. So to me, that's a bit of a development cop-out. And thankfully, they didn't stick to that because they have, in fact, been developing a VR version, and that is going to be released. It's going to be on the HTC VIve. That is the platform that it's currently working on. There's a Twitch stream recording that I'm going to include as well. You can see the game being played. You can see the pacing is just fine. It's fast, and it looks good. What isn't clear, and perhaps watching the entire Twitch stream, which I didn't have time to do, and additional research to see, look, do they distill the game down to just being a wave-based game? Or finally, is it a full frickin' VR game? Because a lot of us were disappointed with Serious Sam for that very reason. They took all the good stuff about that game, chucked it out, and left us with a wave game. So hopefully not the case here, but that's Warhammer Vermintide. Now, one of the viewers to this channel, Everything is Forever, he pointed out to me the statistics that I had for the unit sales of the various VR manufacturers did in fact make a reference, not in the graph, but in the body of the article, to saying that the GearVR projection is for 2,316,632 units, which would put it just behind the Sony PlayStation VR. So if these numbers are in any way accurate, and remember what my personal feeling is on statistics like these, then that would be wonderful. But hopefully, after the calendar year has come and gone, and certainly the fiscal year for a lot of Japanese companies like Sony, maybe we'll know how many units they actually moved. All right, first news item. Developer WorldViz has been developing collaboration tools in virtual reality for the business sector. And we don't talk about a lot of business stuff on here, just, unless there's news items that come up, because the focus is so heavily VR gaming centric and entertainment. But there's work being done, and it's all this extra work where, VR tentacles in all these directions that's going to create a successful foundation for VR, period. So I love stuff like this. But the application is called Skofield, and WorldViz CEO Andrew Beal explains that he sees this as an immersive means of collaborating ideas, groups of people, bringing them together. And as somebody who does a lot of conference calls, and I've done them with video conferencing, I've done them with video conferencing in addition to collaborative tools, TeamViewer, Citrix Anywhere, WebEx. There's so many tools out there, right, for collaboration, and that, to have it work in VR, if done correctly, could do so much. And we talked about that in terms of body language. Things might need to be done. I think augmented for this type of functionality may work better, at least initially, until VR kind of can catch up and represent lifelike people. Although some of the stuff that I'm seeing in Unity that I talked about yesterday absolutely is coming very close to that. So that's Skofield, and WorldViz is currently taking beta registrations from companies that want to test the collaboration tool. Next news piece, this one comes to us from a viewer as well, Kent Murray in the UK, I believe, and it's called Cybust. Now, initially when he direct messaged me on Twitter, I thought it was something I'd covered before. It sounded familiar. And then I looked back just to verify, because I'd rather, check it than potentially miss out on a story. And sure enough, no, I had not covered it. So thanks to that, Kent. It's something he's actually ordered, and I've asked him to give me some feedback when it arrives. Cybust, how to describe it? Well, I'm going to put up a picture so you're going to see right away. It looks kind of like a wig head or a mannequin head, whatever you want to call it, right? That people use to store wigs on in, wardrobe rooms, etc. The difference with this is that it's being marketed as a premium product. So what the hell does that mean? Well, the most important thing, whenever you talk premium, it seems to have a very hefty price tag. And this device is no exception. So it's a Canadian company, but obviously they sell internationally. They have the retail price at $89.99 US. Now, my cheap bastard of a friend, Exity, who you guys see on Friday, it just blew his mind when I told him that. And he says his exact response to the story, because like I said, he's literally as cheap as Scrooge, is that a $5 styrofoam head nailed to a block of wood won't tip over either. And that was his comeback to me when I said, but it has a metal plate on the bottom, which it does, and felt on the bottom of that. Now, before I continue, let me just say that even for me, yeah, this is way too rich. And I'm a pretty cheap guy too. $89, especially when I have 4 HMDs, that's a pretty hefty price tag. 600 Canadian just to put your HMDs on there. Now, let's go back to what the product is intended to do. It's intended to, like I said, be premium in that it looks good, stylish, allows you to safely put your HMD on it, because as Exity mentioned, those old styrofoam wig heads, etc., they toppled over easy. Nobody wants to put $500 worth of kit on one of those to have it come careening off a bookshelf, right? And smash your investment into pieces. So that's kind of, they're targeting two, the stability aspect and the premium aspect. But for me, $39.49, that would be a little bit more reasonable, but I don't know what the profit margins are for this unit. There's 5 reviews on the website, and they're all positive. But yeah, I'm not sure how many units, the owner of the product has moved, if he's moved hundreds, just, single digits. But unless there's a reason for having it priced that high, other than just the fact that it's premium, you would think potentially he could move more, maybe at a bit lower of a price. Because at $89, I won't personally even contemplate it. $49, if I only had one HMD, I might buy it. But volume 4 at $29 to $39, absolutely. That I would still consider. So, but who knows? Like I said, Kent's going to let us know once he receives his unit, and I will report back here, because I am curious. All right, next news story. VR-Optomized code coming to us in the Unreal Engine 4.14 version that was released today. Now, Epix claims that it's 22% faster, and that claim comes from testing on a 970 GTX on that Robo Recall game that I showed about 6 weeks ago, which looks absolutely gorgeous using the Unreal Engine. Yeah, and they said it was a 22% speed increase. So take that with a grain of salt. Hopefully we're going to see some benchmarks that reflect that. I know my own experience throughout the years has been, look, whether it's NVIDIA or ATI, I guess now AMD, Matrox, whatever company, whenever they claim double digits or even high single-digit percentage speed increases, I never seem to be able to recreate that when I do my own benchmarking. And I could be doing something wrong. I'm just saying it's, one of those things that I would love to see somebody else test other than me. Next news story. Sony Pictures plans to use Nokia's Ozo to make VR content. Now, they've signed a deal with Nokia to do the development. This is the $45,000 US camera that I've talked about 2 months ago. You can also, for $2,500 US, get a 500 gigabyte media module, which I imagine is for extra storage space. Seems pretty hefty, but look, Walt Disney signed with Nokia earlier this year, the same type of agreement. Obviously, Walt Disney Studios and Sony have deeper pockets than the typical consumer, which it isn't really targeted at anyways, more the enterprise level. So yeah, very cool. That's one of their focuses, Sony, is creating higher quality 360-degree content. Next news story, Oculus acquires vision company Zurich I. I'm going to include 2 links because not much is known about this company. You go to their website, it's cryptic as hell. You can't find much about these guys. It's 2 Zurich universities, so University of Zurich and EMT Zurich, group and members of both universities that have come together to form the company Zurich I. The only thing that you can find is a bit of verbiage on their website that reads thusly: Zurich I enables machines to independently navigate in any space. Our hardware-software system provides reliable and sub-centimeter accurate position information to robots that navigate indoors, in urban areas, and in fully open space. The only thing I read there was Terminator units. Something about robotics. But yeah, I think you'll agree that's pretty cryptic. What does that mean? So hopefully we'll find out. There's obviously a virtual reality reason or some kind of tracking or something reason for them acquiring these guys. So that was late last week. Next up, there's been a lot of skepticism, myself included, and I've stated as much with regards to the VIve wireless upgrade from TPCAST. So the most logical conclusion, given the facts that I've been able to assemble that I can come up with, is that it adds less than 2 milliseconds of latency to the existing latency that you have, not less than 2 milliseconds overall. I think that would just be obscenely fast, and nobody's even close to that, especially not in wireless. So I think those aspects related to the latency of just what that unit introduces is less than 2 milliseconds. But overall, controls, render to screen, reaction time, all of that, my guess is 24 milliseconds total, which is still pretty damn good. Not as good as under 2 milliseconds, but still in the easily acceptable range. Now, Alvin Graylin, who's the China regional president of HTC, I've talked about him many times on this channel, he's said himself to Upload VR when asked, the updated specs released by TPCAST should help to relieve some of their concerns, but ultimately, first-hand experience will be the real proof when the product is made available for broader review. I concur completely. He then adds, the good news for all current VIve users and those considering VIve is that there is a clear path to wireless VR coming for current devices if they need it. So there you go. All right, next news story has to do with Jaguar. They unveiled their I-Pace electric concept car in virtual reality. Now, this is a Mashable.com article that I found. The author's Dario Strange, and I'm sure he got the Doctor Strange stuff growing up. But anyways, he considers the experience when he looked at the concept car in VR, the showroom of the future. And that really got me thinking, in terms of advertising. We are so desensitized as consumers to the mediums of advertising that we have around us, whether it's radio, television, posters, billboards, neon signs, magazine ads, you name it, we've grown up with it. We're fairly desensitized. And unless there's some kind of primal urge, or it's something that we're in the midst of doing anyways and it gives us an idea, most of us don't succumb to that. You know, subliminally, sure, to some degree, but we're pretty desensitized. What is the impact with virtual reality? Having an HMD on your head and being exposed to advertising, is it going to have more of an impact? I would love to see a study of traditional advertising versus, you know, the same thing but VR based. Take 100 people and see if you could come up with some scientific way of testing that and measuring it. I just think it'd be a cool exercise, because I do wonder, you know, have we reset the clock on that, you know, being desensitized to advertisements when we go with a new technology like that? So anyways, the kind of stuff I think about on a drive home, eh? Next news piece, Project Dali, building an endless creative canvas with VR. Now this is from Adobe.com, and their own description, it looks a lot like a tilt brush style program. Their own description reads, our Adobe research is exploring what an endless creative canvas in VR might look like. Project Dali is an immersive drawing experience for the VR environment. Within this application, artists can import their own unique brushes to create a three-dimensional, gestural, and intuitive way. Project Dali is in early preview stage, and the vision is to connect to current Adobe technologies in the Creative Cloud and mobile apps families. So, sounds very cool, looks very cool. As I find out more, I will let you know. Link in the description as per normal. Last news one, and this one is a little bit of a, not creepy, guys, but it would have been more appropriate for Halloween, okay? And it was just, I was reading a VR article on express.co.uk, which I believe is a UK paper. I don't know if it's tabloid-based or what. Seem to have a lot of legitimate articles on there as well. Regardless, the topic and the question that it brought up, you know, are worth asking. And it's, look, would you have a virtual reality breakfast or meeting with your dead spouse or partner in virtual reality, or hell, dead favorite pet? And where I'm going with that is, when photography and photographs were new, so in the Victorian age, I think 1848 is the first verifiable photograph, etc., etc. There's lots of cool statistics around photography and the birth of it. But the other thing it was a powerful new medium. Until then, unless you had somebody who painted lifelike, photorealistic, you could not preserve the in-your-memory vision of what that spouse or relative or pet looked like. And as the months and years went by, you would remember less and less and less. Well, now, with photography, they could capture them, the essence of what that person looked like, for nostalgia, for reflection, for keepsake. And man, did the Victorians ever do that, especially in the US, Canada, England, and other parts of the UK, etc., and the Commonwealth, I'm sure. But the idea was, when children died, and in the 1800s Victorian era, there were, you know, stillbirths, and lots of children still died. We didn't have the vaccinations and all the stuff that we have now with modern medicine. They would prop the dead child up, have their living children huddle around, and take a family photo. And it was perfectly normal and accepted, because it was using this powerful new medium to preserve that family member. Well, now with VR, we could do that times 1,000. Are people going to do that? Take 360-degree content, take virtual reality content, run them down their evolutionary paths, and let's re-examine them 10 years from now, hypothetically. Imagine how good the technology would be. You could literally take your favorite pet, maybe it's a dog, cat, right? Do a 360-degree scan, bring that pet into VR, and have it be absolutely lifelike again. So When that Pat passes away, you can relive what that was like. Are we different now as a society 100 years later? Could we still do stuff like that? You know, given that it's such a new medium. I don't know. I don't have the answers to that, but I think it's a cool thought. All right, guys, that is it for the news today. Cheers as always, and definitely catch you on the VR flip side.